The Blue Jays, as we mentioned, playing a charter member of the American League back in 1901. The Chicago White Sox played the very first game in the American League. Now they're going to introduce the starting lineups. The 48th Highlanders marching on in the left field area. And we'll have some activities underway now. It looks as though they're going to give it a real try to get this ball game underway. Here it is, the first pitch in Blue Jay history. It's a strike with a fastball. That ball has been exchanged and will go to the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame.
The Canadian Sports Hall of Fame.
Brett deals, hard hit ball, power alley, left center field, home run! Duggan hits the first homer in Blue Jay history and will score the first run.
Don Bobby Durr, the batting coach for the Blue Jays, was telling me about Duggan during batting practice. Very strong, and he hit that ball real well over the 375-foot sign and probably went close to 400 feet.
What a thrill for this crowd. There he is, Duggan, hard-hitting first baseman. This crowd roaring like a World Series crowd. Here's Brett's pitch. It is hit deep to right field. Home run! Duggan will go down in memory and history as the first Blue Jay to hit 2 home runs in the opening game, back-to-back. Just tremendous. Barrios getting ready with a 1-2 delivery. Hit hard, right field, home run!
Well, Otto Velez can take his time scoring from second base on that long home run.
Well, a pretty astute move on the part of Roy Hartsfield, who sends Al Scott in to pinch hit for Steve Bowling. He hammers a 2-run blast, 365 feet to right center field. And the Blue Jays go on top 7-4. Ground ball to the shortstop, up with it. Blue Jays win it. Toronto Blue Jays have beaten the Chicago White Sox 9-5, and the crowd is all standing.
America's national pastime has moved to Canada, where the fans are really in love with baseball. In Toronto, they waited a mighty long time for the major leagues to expand, and now the young Blue Jays are kicking up more of a fuss in the American League than anyone thought possible, led by rookie manager Roy Hartsfield.
The philosophy of the Toronto Blue Jays prior to the expansion draft in New York on November 5th was to go for the younger players. We felt that this was the ideal way to go, and also, if the players were available, to mix in a few veteran ball players to be a stabilizing influence. And we were quite fortunate in that respect. After the draft was over, we were quite happy with the players that we got in the draft, and we feel that we accomplished that part of our goal.
The fact is, the Jays drafted some players worth chirping about. Otto Velez, selected from the Yankees, got the Blue Jays off to a flying start in April with a hot bat. His power and .400 average made him the league's player of the month. And although he's since come down to earth, Otto has proved he belongs in the major leagues. So has Al Woods, who can run, field, and hit .300. And Doug Ault, who's shown good power, and now he shows the Red Sox he can also bunt. Every team needs a good shortstop, especially one that can help make the double play like budding all-star Bob Baylor, the Jays' #1 pick from Baltimore, a top choice who's been among the league's leading hitters all season.
I was fortunate enough to get drafted into the Blue Jay organization, and being the first pick was even more beneficial. There's a lot of young guys and a few old guys mixed in, and we're really thrilled being here, and it's just a great organization so far. The coaches are doing a great job, and we're really working good together, surprisingly.
Of course, the Blue Jays have got a long way to go to get it all together, because very few of their players have had much big league experience before this season, but they're learning fast. And on the field, they're helped out by 39-year-old Ron Fairley. How's the team look to you, Ron?
We have a bunch of young players, as has been mentioned several times. We have, I think, 20 rookies. And my job here in Toronto is to play the caliber baseball that I have been playing for the last 17 years and to help some of these young ball players mature and become major league players a little bit sooner. Several years ago, when I signed with the Dodgers, I was very, very fortunate in the fact that I was given the opportunity to be associated with players like Gil Hodges, Duke Snider, Pee Wee Reese. And I said a long time ago that if I was ever given the opportunity to help a young ball player, because of the fellows that I've just mentioned have helped me out so much, that I'd certainly pass that information on to them.
Ron's been doing fairly well with his bat, which has him among the league leaders in hitting. Fairly is shining in the twilight of his career, but for the Blue Jays, the sun is just beginning to rise. Manager Hartsfield is optimistic. Right, Roy?
Hopefully that sometime in the very near future that several of our young ball players can blossom at the same time, so to speak, and then take us out of the suspect category and put us into a contending category.
In the AL East, Billy Martin wasn't the only familiar face returning to manage. In Baltimore, the Orioles' legendary Earl Weaver came out of retirement in mid-June, but couldn't recapture the old magic, and the Orioles never challenged for the division. That top perch belonged to Toronto. While the traditional powers struggled, the upstart Blue Jays would make their first serious run at the title. Manager Bobby Cox's only established star was ace pitcher Dave Stieb, who'd been the American League starter in the All-Star game in both '83 and '84.
Dave Stieb always had great stuff. Hard slider, good fastball, and he was intimidating on the mound. He wasn't afraid to get hitters off the plate, and you know, he was like a bulldog.
Stieb would lead the American League in ERA in 1985. By the middle of May, the Blue Jays were alone atop the AL East.
What a play!
Led by a young outfield that was the envy of the American League. Three 25-year-olds with all the tools. George Bell in left, Lloyd Mosby in center, and Jesse Barfield in right.
We had a great outfield. Mosby could steal you some bases, and George could take you deep. Jesse had one of the greatest throwing arms out there.
While the Blue Jays were a novelty atop the East, the Royals were a fixture atop the AL West, looking to make their 7th trip to the playoffs. Leading the way was their incomparable third baseman, George Brett.
When you thought of the Royals, you thought of George. No doubt George was, the heart and soul of the club. When it got hot, when we were in a crisis, we knew that George was always there for us.
Beyond Brett, the Royals lineup was less imposing. The rest of the league caught on, intentionally walking Brett more times in '85 than any American League batter since Ted Williams in 1957. Unable to score many runs, the Royals' fate in 1985 would hang largely on the young arms of their starting pitchers.
Struck him out.
Including free-spirited 21-year-old Brett Saberhagen.
He's a little bit of a flake, which I kind of like a little bit. He has a good time, but he's also very, very serious and very tense when he gets that ball and goes out on the mound. He's got a chance to be an outstanding pitcher.
When he came to spring training, he was just some little skinny kid. He weighed about 160 pounds and, didn't have any facial hair. And all of a sudden, he kind of caught everybody's eye little by little.
American League Showdown. In New York, the Jays paint the town blue. With first place at stake, a record 214,000 turned out for a 4-game matchup between the Blue Jays and Yankees. Ron Hasse struck the crushing blow in Game 1. A 3-run blast as New York scored 6 times in the 8th for a stunning 7-5 win. Having blown a 3-run lead, the Jays looked a bit shaky, but shook off any notions of fading down the stretch.
They still have to come at the Blue Jays. We're not backing down from anyone. They still have to catch us. We've been there all year, and hopefully we'll stay there.
Veteran Al Oliver stayed tough against Phil Niekro next night, helping Toronto spoil Nuxie's first bid for career win number 300. The Big O broke out of an RBI slump to drive in all of Toronto's runs in a 3-2 win.
I've been around the course now for 17 years, and I think the most important thing is I still can lead by example. I'm 38. I haven't slowed up. This team kind of reminds me of the 71 and 72 Pirates. You know, I was in my 3rd and 4th year, myself and Hebner, Dave Cash, Sanguin, people like that, we all came up together. And this team is based the same way, where the players enjoy seeing each other do their thing. No envy, no resentment. And I think when you have this kind of attitude, you can't help but win.
Especially with Tom Henke on the mound. In Game 2, the fireballing reliever blazed past the Yankees for save number 12 in 13 chances. No wonder his nickname is catching on.
I had the nickname the Terminator in Syracuse, and it's kind of carrying over up even in Toronto a little bit. And I knew it was going to be tough to crack into the bullpen because they got a couple of the best in the game right now with Gary Lavelle and Bill Cottle, and I just figured, well, I'd have to pitch well down there and bide my time, and hopefully, you know, they'd give me a shot.
Lloyd Mosby gave the Jays a shot in the arm with 6 straight hits. Altogether in the series, 8 hits. And fresh respect for Mosby, who's been on the upswing since moving to the number 2 spot in the batting order in June.
When you start hitting the ball good, I think confidence become a factor, and I think right now that's a factor for me. I'm coming out, I have confidence that I will get 2 hits, if not more. I have confidence that I'm going to drive in some runs and that I can help this ball club out. And with the attributes of Cliff Johnson and Al Oliver, 2 guys who have been there, I think that's has been a key for us, because after a loss, we don't sit around and dwell on it. We go home, we still joke about it, and I think the looseness and the character of this ball club right now is one of which I haven't seen in the past.
As for Cliff Johnson, he kept the Jays loose with 5 hits and 5 RBIs as Toronto took 3 out of 4 from the sliding Yankees to open up some breathing room atop the East. Doyle Alexander beat New York in the finale to go 16-8 and keep Blue Jay pennant hopes alive and well.
We've been in first place for a number of months now. We want to remain there if possible. The Yankees are playing great, and we have a little motto that we give 100%. If it's not good enough, you know, can't do anything about it. So we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Right now, high in the catbird seat.
Still in the catbird seat, the Jaybird sweep knows no retreat. The Blue Jays did laze off a bit in losing 4-5 to Boston after their big series in New York, but got right back on track against Milwaukee this weekend.
I think coming off that big series up in New York, I think the whole club is a little bit down as far as hitting, and that happens sometimes when you play a tough series like that, but we're working on it.
Jesse Barfield went to work on the Brewers in the first of 3 games with home run number 27. A 5-1 Toronto win followed by a 6-1 victory. And to wrap the series, the entire lineup went to work. From leadoff hitter Tony Fernandez, who went 4 for 5 on down. 22 hits, a team high for 85. 13-5 Blue Jays, a magic 3 from their first division victory. In the West, the Royals bet Brett would get the best of the Angels in their series opener, and by George, bet right.
This one is hit well and deep to right and may have the distance. It is well struck and off the side and right. It's 1-1. His 26th home run of the year and a career high for him.
George Brett had been slumping somewhat, as had teammate Jim Sundberg, batting with the score still 1-1 in the 7th.
Hits it hard to center field. Pettis on his horse. This one's well struck. It is gone. A home run for Jim Sundberg to dead center field, and it's 2-1 Kansas City.
After which, KC's other Brett Saberhagen, nailed down a big win.
0-2. Strike 3 call. Fastball on the outside part of the plate, and Saberhagen not only wins his 20th, but he puts the Kansas City Royals back into a dead even tie with the Angels in the Western Division of the American League.
Most baseball eyes focused on Missouri. The game's 2 closest races, the American League West and National League East, directly contested in the Show Me State. But Tuesday night, the visitors showed the Missourians a thing or two. In Kansas City, the California Angels struck first. Bobby Gritch's 13th home run, a solo shot, put him up on the way to a 4-2 win. Mike Witt and Donnie Moore combining to permit the Royals just 6 hits. Moore finished up for his 30th save. The Angels ascend above Kansas City, a game ahead in the American League West, with 2 of the big 4-game series still to go. Angels second baseman Bobby Gritch points out there's nothing like baseball in October.
Yeah, it's a playoff type atmosphere because all the marbles are on the line for us right now. This is it. This is the culmination of 7 months of hard work. And for a lot of us that pump waste during the winter and work hard during the winter, it's like, 12 months of hard work coming to the end here. So everything's on the line. Our owner made the trip, not using the press box, so the pressure's on, right?
American League East, largest crowd of the year in Toronto. What a game they're seeing. 5th inning, it's scoreless. Bobby Meacham drills one down the left field line. Here comes Willie Randolph. There's going to be a play at the plate. Here comes the throw, and Randolph is safe. It's 1-0 Yankees. 5th inning, it's 2-0. And Mosby hits one to Andre Robertson. Now watch what happens. Robertson throws the ball away. 2 runs come in. We have a tie ball game right now at 2-2. But in the 8th inning, this is Cliff Johnson at the plate. He drives one up the middle. Great play by Meacham. Here comes Mosby. Throw to the plate. Not in time. 3-2 Jays. The Jays start celebrating, but it's too premature. Can you dig this? 2 outs. 9th inning. Rain coming down. Butch Weiniger, a home run, and it ties the game up at 3-3. And we're going to keep it in the 9th inning. Watch what happens. Disaster hits Toronto. This is Don Mattingly. He hits a routine fly ball. Jay should be out of the inning. Watch what happens to Mosby. He drops the ball. Meacham scores. Yankees trying to stay alive. They lead 4-3 in the 9th inning. I'm having a heart attack.
To continue that hot streak against the A's on this evening, and they did. Kansas City led 1-0 when George Orta hit this liner over the head of A's left fielder Jose Canesco, and Willie Wilson scores from first on the misplay. And it is 1-0 Royals. In the 4th, with the bases loaded, it's that hero, George Brett, hits into an apparent force play, but the umpires rule the second baseman's foot's off the bag, and the Royals lead it 3-1. Dave Kingman cuts it to 3-2, a mammoth 7th inning blast, which he has made a habit of lately. But George Brett, speaking of habits, it's a short fly ball in the 7th. It gets past the sliding Canesco, and it is, you guessed it, another inside the park home run for the new Mr. October, it seems, of the American League, George Brett. Inside the park home run, Kansas City takes the ball game over the Oakland A's, 4-2, and after the game, George Brett talked about his second inside the park home run in 3 nights.
Center fielder was really backing up the play, and, when you're 15 games out of first place with 3 to go, you're not backing up the players out there. The ball was slicing away from him. I thought I had a good chance.
Now you can go relax the last 2 days.
Not really. We have to win tomorrow night unless California loses again tomorrow afternoon in Texas. We're hoping that Texas can beat them so we can finally have a laugher. We haven't had a laugher in so long. Every game has been such an action-packed game, and they've all meant so much. Hopefully tomorrow, by the time we get to the ballpark, we'll have it clinched.
On came the Oakland A's as the Royals fine-tuned their division plans. On October 4th, Mark Gubicza beat the A's 4-2. Now Kansas City was 1 game away from clinching the title. The next night, the Royals battled back from a 4-run deficit as Willie Wilson looked for a big hit in the bottom of the 10th.
The 1-0 pitch. Lined off the glove of the pitcher, base hit! The Royals have won it! It's over! And a mob scene on the field. The Royals are Western Division champions again!
Coming back all year long, the Royals now claim their 6th Western Division title in the past 10 years. But the long-anticipated thrill of it all was only just beginning.
Time ever, the Toronto Blue Jays rule the roost. They took over the lead for good on May 20th, tried to apply the stranglehold during the summer months, but instead it came down to the final weekend series against the Yankees. It was slated for 3, but the Jays needed only 2. They blew it last night against New York, so this afternoon it was simply a matter of go out and get it. They do. Long ball. Let their bats do the talking. In the 2nd, Ernie Witt solo shot, 1-0 Toronto. Then in the 3rd, Lloyd Mosby. Now he gets some help from a 25-mile-per-hour wind, but he'll take it. It's 2-0 Toronto. The next man up, another homer, back-to-back jobs. This is Willie Upshaw. He didn't need the jet stream. There's no doubt about that one. The Jays can taste it. In the 5th, they get a simple little single, but it is just as effective as the homers. Garcia brings home Fernandez, makes it 5-1. And that was more than enough for Doyle Alexander, the former Yankee. His record now 17-10. He's won 10 of 14. And George Bell tells the story. 9 years in the league, and now the best and the toughest division in the game. Toronto, 5-1 winners over New York. Phil Niekro goes for number 300 again on Sunday. The Blue Jays will worry about that then, if the partying ever stops.
It really doesn't matter who we beat. It just turned out to be the Yankees, and it just feels great.
This is the greatest. This is just the start of something I think that's just going to carry on and into the playoffs and into the World Series. I'm so proud of all these guys out here. It's unbelievable. We have so much character out there and so much class. It's just destined for us to win it.
We want to just right now relax, let it all settle in, and on the road we go. We just play good sound baseball the way the Blue Jays can play. We'll be a winner again.
I tell you, when I leave this party here, well, I'm immediately going to be thinking about Kansas City.
All right.
I don't mean to cut it short, but I tell you, we got our work cut out for us.
It is that time in Major League Baseball, down to only 4 teams playing pressure-packed postseason playoff action. And a lot of peas being thrown around at this time of the year, which is why we tried out our regular season batting champ, Lou Palmer, to take a closer look at the 2 divisional League Championship Series playoffs. I got stuck with all those peas. Sorry, can you untie me?
Well, I'll try. A lot of firsts, as a matter of fact, going in the playoffs. It's the first time the Toronto Blue Jays have ever gone to postseason competition. And, of course, it's a first for the new system, the 7-game playoff system, just like the World Series. It all begins in the American League that opens up in Toronto at Exhibition Stadium. They will host the Kansas City Royals. And, of course, as we said, the Jays' first taste of postseason. The Royals certainly are used to it. Let's take a look at the teams. George Bell is Toronto's main power hitter, and like so many of the other Toronto Blue Jays, not only power, he's got speed. He can leg out anything in the infield. He gets his share of those kinds of hits. George Bell, one of the guys that we'll be watching. Jesse Barfield also has been a Blue Jay hero. Timely hitter. He's got bursts of power and, of course, a fine outfielder with a great arm. As for the pitching staff, Dave Stieb really is the bellwether, although his won and lost record doesn't look like it. His ERA outstanding, and he certainly is a real competitor. He, of course, an all-star performer. Blue Jays have a rookie stopper in the bullpen they call Tom the Terminator, Tom Henke, who came in August and has done a great job. For Kansas City, why not George Brett? What an October he had. His power hitting and leadership on the field and in the clubhouse make him the Royal player that Toronto players have to fear the most. The Royals' leader in home runs, though, is their first baseman, Steve Bye-Bye Balboni, who said bye-bye to 36 shots this year. Big number 45, enjoying his finest Major League season. 5 excellent starters on the Royal staff, and they may all see action. Brett Saberhagen, perhaps the best of them, at 21 years old, and one of the favorites for the Cy Young Award. And waiting in the bullpen is the Quiz, Danny Quisenberry. Anytime the Royals lead in the 9th inning, they just give the ball to Quisenberry, and he usually puts it away. So the Royals are in pretty good shape for the playoffs, and, of course, so are the Toronto Blue Jays, even though it'll be their first appearance.
A big year. I mean, a big year for Blue Jays fans.
Boy, they've been contenders for a couple years now, but they've finally done it this year, and of course, are excited in Canada. I think it's great for baseball, too. The playoffs begin tonight in Toronto as the Jays host the Kansas City Royals. Toronto, of course, coming at you with that heavy lineup. George Bell, 28 homers in the season, 95 RBIs. Jesse Barfield finally had the year that so many people have expected from him for so long, 27 homers, always making the big play and the big catch. Dave Stieb, their big stopper, pitched 265 innings during the season, and of course when they need to go to the bullpen, Tom Henke is there to pick up the relief action. The Royals, on the other hand, George Brett hit .335, second only to Wade Boggs in the American League, and he was really hot down the stretch. Steve Balboni, 36 homers. He's been a slugger, steady performer. And of course, what can you say about their pitching? Brett Saberhagen, 20-6, an ERA of 2.87 in just his second year. But the Jays will be pitching Dave Stieb tonight, and here's Dave.
Like I said, whether or not I win my games is not important as long as we win the game and reach this point. And we have, and that's worked right in line with the way I was thinking, and that's made it easier for me to deal with this year. I know I'm going to be pretty pumped up there. I'm going to be throwing a little harder than normal, maybe overthrowing a bit, and I'll be able to correct that right away. And past experience in dealing with that kind of thing is I've been a little wild, but wild enough to be successful.
All right, how successful will he be? Will be up to Willie Wilson, George Brett, and the Kansas City Royals. So it's Kansas City and Toronto tonight at 8 o'clock. National League Championship Series getting underway in Los Angeles tomorrow, 8:30 at night.
the 1985 American League Championship Series. Tonight from Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, Ontario, it's the Kansas City Royals and the Toronto Blue Jays. The excitement, the magic of the Championship Series has hit Toronto, Canada for the first time. Exhibition Stadium on the waters of Lake Ontario is the scene. A crowd of 45,000 expected. The weather is ideal. Temperature in the mid-50s. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the opening game of the American League Championship Series. I'm Dick Enberg, and tomorrow night it'll be Game 1 out in Los Angeles as the Dodgers and Cardinals play for the National League Championship. Kansas City Royals, winners in the West. They have been in the playoffs 6 of the last 10 years. That's the best record in baseball. This is the unique first experience for the Toronto Blue Jays. Unique indeed, but don't confuse Toronto with baseball. This is not a foreign subject to them. In fact, America's pastime has been played and cheered in Toronto even before Abner Doubleday was credited with its creation. Babe Ruth hit his first professional homer here in 1914. It came against the Maple Leafs for most of this century, an important part of the AAA International League. Then in 1977, Toronto became Major League. Just 9 seasons later, the Blue Jays are in the playoffs. Saturday, when the clinching out was squeezed, Toronto's ode to joy began. The celebration of Toronto's success in the 162-game regular season is over. Now, it's best of 7. Toronto meets Kansas City. And the starting pitchers for Game 1. It'll be right-hander Dave Stieb for the Blue Jays. Best ERA in the entire American League. He'll be opposed by left-hander Charlie Liebrandt, the 17-game winner for Kansas City. Abbreviated version.
I hated the 3 out of 5, Dick. I'll tell you, the biggest fear that a player has is that it's going to be over before you ever get started and that your number 1 pitcher was only going to pitch 1 time. But in a 4 out of 7, there's always that possibility you're going to have him in there for 3 games, and that makes you feel a lot better.
Now through Rick Dempsey's catcher's eyes, let's look at the Toronto Blue Jays, not a well-known Major League team. They start at the top of the list with Damaso Garcia.
Dick, Damaso Garcia is the most notorious first-ball fastball hitter in the American League. If he gets a hit his first time up, watch out, because he's going to be the toughest out in their lineup the rest of the night. The only time I had any success against him was establishing the breaking ball for strikes early and hope that he can swing at a bad pitch.
George Bell, the leader in home runs and RBIs.
He's always a dangerous hitter in that lineup. He sprays the ball around with power, and I hate when Earl Weaver tells me I have to pitch around him because he uses a bat 2 inches longer than any other hitter, and he can hit the ball way off the plate.
Jesse Barfield. Barfield had a sensational second half.
Well, I consider him the star of the Toronto Blue Jays the second half of the season. He's proved to me that he can handle the ball in, and for a right-hand hitter, it's rare that he's a great low ball hitter. And on defense, I find you can't run on him at all because I put him in a class with Winfield and Dwight Evans. He's just spectacular.
And in fact, Barfield, Mosby, and Bell may have the best 3 rifles of any outfield in the entire major leagues. Coming up next, the star of the Kansas City Royals, George Brett.
I just don't like going to Yankee Stadium, even though 1980 we did beat them 3 straight. I just feel better playing the Toronto Blue Jays for some reason. We played them 12 times this year. We won 7. I think our confidence would be a little bit better against them than it would be against the Yankees.
George, you've done it 6 times now. You've been in the playoff, and you've never won the big prize.
Well, we've come close. 1980, we beat the Yankees 3 times, 3 straight games. And to us, I think after losing those 3 playoffs, 76, 77, and 78, it was like when we beat the Yankees, finally, we had won the World Series. And then we had to go to Philadelphia and play the World Series, and I don't think we were really mentally prepared for it. I think this year it's a little bit different. Our young pitching staff has done a tremendous job the last week of the season. Guys that really weren't consistent for us all year long pitched great games, the best games of the year for us, and Bud Black and Danny Jackson. So if our pitching can stay the way it has been and the way it should be, I think we'll be there this year.
Ready to wrap it up, Rick Dempsey. It's part of your obligation to pick for us a winner in this series.
Hey, while George is sitting here, because I know they're going to pitch around him every opportunity they get, but I got to go with Toronto because they have a little bit stronger defense and a little bit better offense. And like I say, they're not going to let him hit the ball if they can help it.
Sometimes they can't help it, though. Hopefully they will not be able to help it. I'm swinging the bat extremely well right now. Hopefully I'll be able to swing the bat the way I did the last week of the season in the playoffs.
And we'll see how they do swing the bat. We're ready for the starting lineups. First from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, we go to NBC News.
First base coach, Jose Martinez. In the bullpen. Pitching coach, Gary Blaylock, and bullpen coach, Jim Schaefer. The non-starters. Infielder, Onyx Concepcion. Infielder, Greg Pryor. Outfielder, Dane Orge. Designated hitter, Hal McRae. The catcher, John Watson. Pitcher, Mike Jones. Catcher, Jamie Quirk. Pitcher, Mark Gubazaw. Outfielder, Darryl Motley. Pitcher, Danny Jackson. Pitcher, Steve Farr. Pitcher, Joe Beckwith. Pitcher, Dan Quisenberry. Pitcher, Brett Saberhagen. Outfielder, Lynn Jones. Pitcher, Bud Black. And now, the starting lineup for the American League West Division champion Kansas City Royals. First, the manager, Dick Hauser. Batting first, in left field, number 21, Lonnie Smith. Batting second, in center field, number 6, Willie Wilson. Batting third, at third base, number 5, George Brett. Batting fourth, the designated hitter, number 3, George Orta. Batting fifth, in right field, number 15, Pat Sheridan. Batting sixth, at second base, number 20, Frank White. Batting seventh, at first base, number 45, Steve Balboni. Batting eighth, the catcher, number 8, Jim Sundberg. Batting ninth, at shortstop, number 1, Buddy Biancalana. The starting pitcher for the Royals and warming up in the right field bullpen, number 37, Charlie Liebrandt. Ladies and gentlemen, the Western Division champion, Kansas City Royals. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 1985 American League Eastern Division champions, your Toronto Blue Jays. Blue Jays equipment manager Jeff Ross. Trainers pitchers, Ken Carson, Tommy Craig. The coaches, third base coach, Jimmy Williams. First base coach, Billy Smith. Hitting coach, Cito Gaston. In the bullpen coach John Sullivan and the pitching coach Al Widmer. The non-starters, designated hitter Al Oliver. Infielder Manny Lee. Infielder Rance Mullinex. The catcher Mark Martinez. Pitcher Jim Clancy. Pitcher Jimmy Key. Infielder Cecil Fielder. Pitcher Steve Davis. Outfielder Lou Thornton. Pitcher Jim Acker. Pitcher Doyle Alexander. Pitcher Bill Cottle. Designated hitter Jeff Burrows. Pitcher Gary Lavelle. Pitcher Tom Filer. Pitcher Tom Henke. Pitcher Dennis Lamp. And in the bullpen, catcher Jeff Herron. And now the starting lineup for your Toronto Blue Jays. The manager, Bobby Cox. First, at second base, number 7, Damaso Garcia. Batting second, in center field, number 15, Lloyd Mosby. Third, in left field, number 11, George Bell. Batting fourth, the designated hitter, 00, Brett Johnson. Fifth, in right field, number 29, Jesse Barfield. Batting six. At first base, number 26, Willie Upshaw. Batting seven. At third base, number 16, Garth Ord. The catcher, number 12, Ernie Witt. Batting ninth, the shortstop, number 1, Tony Fernandez. Tonight's starting pitcher for the Blue Jays and warming up in the bullpen, number 37, Dave Stieb. Ladies and gentlemen, your 1985 Toronto Blue Jays. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we ask you to rise and join the popular Canadian recording artists, Dan, Gord, Larry, and Lloyd, the Mercy Brothers, in the singing of the national anthems.
What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare upon bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the our home and native land, true native love in our hearts shall stand. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, but to your strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Love keep on glorious and glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for
The Championships International, Canada's Blue Jays, Kansas City's Royals. Game 1 of the American League Championship Series after these messages. The Toronto
Blue Jays drew nearly 2.5 million fans in this, their first ever championship season. Exhibition Stadium will be jammed tonight as Dave Stieb prepares to take the mound against Charlie Liebrandt of the Royals, the first of a best-of-7 series for the right to meet either the Cardinals or the Dodgers in the World Series. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas along with Tony Kubek. Now, 9 of the last 10 American League Championship Series have been won by the Eastern Division representative. The only exception, the Royals' 3-game sweep over the Yankees in 1980. Perhaps partly because of that, the Blue Jays are 8-5 favorites here, but that seems like quite a bit to me. These teams seem to be evenly matched.
Well, they are, but I disagree with that odds makers on that. The Blue Jays over 161 ball games, I believe, are a better ball club, but we're playing 4-7. And one of the things that scouts always tell you about this Blue Jays club, Bob, is that they have balance. Another thing, of course, is that they have depth in their pitching staff. When you go 4-7, the 4th and 5th starters aren't quite as important. Guys like Dennis Lamp, who went 11-0 out of the bullpen. Filer down out of the minor leagues. Jim Acker won 7. And the left-handers for Kansas City are going to negate a lot of the offensive production. So really, I think it's going to be Kansas City will win this, but I will pick Dave Stieb and Tom Hickey to finish in this ballgame tonight.
The Blue Jays were only around 500 against left-handers, and the only right-hander Dick Hauser will throw in this series is the Cy Young Award candidate, Brett Saberhagen. Quickly here, if you had to pick a couple of guys who might step forward and dominate the series, who would they be?
You know, it's ironically, I like the defensive play of Tony Fernandez at short. Will he be the Dick Green of that Oakland, Los Angeles Dodgers series? We didn't get a base hit, but he won a lot of ball games with the glove. It could happen.
What about on the Kansas City side? The obvious choice would be Brett, who came alive in the last week with 5 homers and 13 RBIs.
Well, I think Rick Dempsey said it well. They're going to try and pitch around him in any case. But if Lonnie Smith gets on base and Willie Wilson, I think they know how to pitch to Wilson. I don't know if they know how to pitch to Lonnie Smith. He could be a key for them.
Hal McRae, however, not in the starting lineup because of that sore rib muscle, and he has been hot behind Brett in the last 2 months of the season, protecting him a little bit. It'll be George Orta tonight, and that might be a minus for Kansas City. We'll be back with the first pitch. Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, flanked by Baseball Commissioner Peter Ueberroth and the President of the American League, Bobby Brown. Moments ago, Mulroney threw out the first ball, and this kind of brings up an interesting question. If the Blue Jays go all the way through and win the World Series, who makes the first phone call? Prime Minister Mulroney or President Reagan?
I give up. Perhaps you'll tell us along the way. What does protocol dictate?
We'll put our crack staff on the case and have an answer if and when.
This defense behind Dave Stieb might be rated second best in the major leagues to the St. Louis Cardinals in the National League. But if you're going to pick a couple of standouts, that man in right field that Rick Dempsey talked about in his throwing arm, he does more than throw. He is playing right field this season, especially the last few months. He's playing right field just like a center fielder. Cutting off the alley, triples and doubles, going in the corner, throwing running outs, and holding runners from going first to third. Tony Fernandez, well, he's made 30 errors, but as Frank White said yesterday, 30 errors on this lumpy, bumpy, artificial surface. He should have had 40 if he didn't have those great hands. He goes, well, both ways. You'll see a very unique style, but he can be terrific.
28-year-old Dave Stieb led the American League in ERA at 2.48. His opponent tonight, Charlie Liebrandt, was second in that department at 2.69. And yet the one-loss record, just 14-13. And the story for Stieb through the years has been he seems to pitch better, statistically better than his record.
Well, he's had that great slider over the past few years. At times this year, the great slider, some say his number 1 pitch, was gone because of an elbow problem. But 5 of his last 6 starts, he's been over the top, and he could be very overpowering in this cool weather.
But he has won just 1 of his last 6 decisions. On the other hand, Liebrandt, his opponent tonight, was the American League Pitcher of the Month in September. Lonnie Smith steps in. Up and in for a ball. Smith, of course, the runner-up in 1982 in the National League's MVP voting to Dale Murphy of Atlanta when Lonnie was with the Cards.
Already got a timeout. The second base umpire call time. Jim Evans, one of the crew chiefs during the regular season. That ball will go into the Canadian National Hall of Fame. And boy, there's a great tradition up here. So the ball immediately leaves Ernie Witt's glove, and it'll go right to the Hall.
In the league championship series, a little more than 8 years after Bill Singer threw the first pitch in their history in 1977 against the White Sox. 2-0 to Lonnie Smith.
Sometimes you can tell early with Steve. If he drops down a little more sidearm, the slider flattens out. If he's over the top, he has much better action.
In the left center field, Bell and Mosby, it's George Bell. He's the guy who squeezed the last out in their division clincher Saturday against the Yankees.
Stieb has seen his strikeouts to innings pitched go down slightly this year. Home runs have gone up. His walks, he's had some control problems this year at times.
In an era where complete games are a relative rarity, Stieb racks up a lot of route-going performances, and he's pitched better than 260 innings each of the last 4 years. Strike one to Willie Wilson.
You perhaps have already noticed that Willie Wilson, who's been such a good leadoff hitter for the Kansas City Royals through his career, is batting second for a simple reason. Lonnie Smith has a higher on-base percentage. And the Kansas City Royals have the lowest on-base percentage in the American League. That's why they have so much trouble scoring runs.
One and two to Wilson, a career .305 hitter who dipped to .278 this year. Broken bat, Stieb knocks it down and has time. 2 out.
An outstanding athlete. Remember Dave Stieb, Southern Illinois, played the outfield.
The third baseman, number 5, George.
A good fielder, holds runners on, along with Ron Guidry, the New York Yankees, who may be heading for a Cy Young Award, either he or Brett Saberhagen. He may be classed as one of the best in the business fielding.
Here's a guy who ordinarily would have the MVP award wrapped up with numbers like those, but you've got to consider Mattingly with the Yankees. It'll be a close race, probably between those two.
Say consider, is there any doubt with 145 RBIs and all the runs scored? And Brett's been outstanding, but Mattingly's doing awesome statistics on the board.
One-0 pitch. Took something off, 1-1. Going into September, Boggs and Brett were neck and neck. In September, George hit just about .220 and lost 20 points on his average, and Boggs surged and won it going away. 1-2 after the bad September. Brett came alive beginning with that series against California a week ago yesterday. They won 3 of 4 from the Angels and in effect won the division right there. And in the final 6 games, Brett had 5 homers and 13 RBIs and hit .450.
Stieb threw a very hard overhanded curve the last pitch.
Well hit the center field. Mosby going back. And it's off the wall on the fly. A 2-out double for George Brett.
This Kansas City team, like they did in '84, little running fastball. You'll cut the fastball on time. You can sink the fastball, and George Brett, when he's in a hot streak, don't care what you throw him, he's going to hit it. The Blue Jays, one series this year, had good success throwing George Brett a lot of slop curves. They tried that the next series they faced him. They absolutely tattooed him.
Hal McRae is available for pinch hitting duty tonight, but it's Orta as the starter. Orta, who played 1 year here in Toronto, 1983, began the year platooning with McRae, but when Hal took over full-time in July, that's when the Royals really picked up. Out of play down the left side. For a 2-month stretch, McRae averaged about an RBI a game and gave Brett a little bit of protection behind him in the batting order. Orta pops it up. It looks playable. Garth Orge is in foul territory now. Fair as he puts it away. Brett is stranded. George Brett, a man who always responds in the showcase, a .338 lifetime hitter in league championship play. We'll be right back.
The Kansas City Royals outfield also, and a good throwing arm with Sheridan. Wilson, the center fielder, can chase the ball down as well as any center fielder in the game. You might wonder on his throwing arm, as some of the coaches of Kansas City said about Lonnie Smith, he can be sensational, then on occasion, he can mess up. But he's made some good catches, but you will run on his throwing arm also.
A year ago, Charlie Liebrandt began the year at Omaha in the American Association. He went 7-1 there, earned a promotion, and wound up pitching very well for them for the duration of the '84 season. You may recall his outing in the final game of the playoffs last year against the Tigers. He pitched a 3-hitter for 8 at Tiger Stadium, wound up on the losing end in a 1-0 heartbreaker, the only run scored on an infield out. And this year, he has 3 shutouts to his credit, mixed in with that 17-9 record.
He will use the 17 inches of that front part of the plate as well as any pitcher in the game. And if the home plate umpire will give him a little more, he'll take that little half screwball to the right-handers and the cut fastball inside, and he'll use 25 inches if you give it to him. He's got excellent control, great change of speed. He breaks a lot of bats inside on right-handers.
Strike 1 to Garcia. The home plate umpire is Dave Phillips, celebrating a birthday today. He's one of the major's best umpires, and like any umpire who's a good one, he's consistent. But generally speaking, Phillips' strike zone is a little wider than average. At least that's the way most catchers I've spoken to feel about it. That might help Liebrandt.
When you talk to catchers, though, it depends if you talk to them when they're hitting or they're catching.
I made that distinction.
The small strikes in when they've got the bat, but they want a big one when they're catching.
There's a broken bat and a roll at a short. Biancalana got him.
That's what he does so well. He's come up with that little cut fastball, a fastball that will run in, not a slider, get it in on the fist of the right-handers. He played a series, they tell me, against the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox players said that he made plays were out of this world. Buddy Biancalana. Roland American. Call him Buddy. But Dick Hauser's been alternating Biancalana and Concepcion with really no rhyme nor reason. He hasn't gotten much offense from them.
An off year for Mosby. He's capable of better figures than that.
That's
1-1.
That's what Liebrandt does to you. End of the bat, up on the fist, take a little off, put a little on. Not quite a left-handed catfish hunter, because the catfish is going to go in the Hall of Fame someday, but close. He's learned to control the 2 different pitches, the inside and outside halves of the plate now.
And his willingness to bust the fastball in on right-handed batters has really been a key for him, especially when his changeup is working, because they begin looking for that changeup a little bit, and then he comes in with the heater and really backs them off. Hit sharply, but right at Biancalana. And that's the second out.
I think Buddy Biancalana has already learned after the couple of trips in here this year and in practice before the game that little bit of a hump at the back part of the infield on the shortstop side when you get some bad hops. Dick Hauser may have been one of the biggest mistakes George Steinbrenner ever made, letting Don Alexander go. Reggie Jackson, he said, but this guy won 103 for Steinbrenner as a rookie manager.
And was on the losing end when Kansas City, then managed by Jim Fry, swept the playoffs from the Yankees in 1980. Strike 1 to George Bell. Full count. Charlie Liebrandt is 29 years old. He was born in Chicago, lives now in Leawood, Kansas, a graduate of Miami of Ohio, and a product of the Cincinnati Reds organization. A little check swing flare into short left center, and it falls in. There goes Bell. Going for 2. He's there.
George Bell knows the turf on a check swing down off his shoe tops. He knows the high bounces, and he knows the throwing arms. That's why 5 scouts at different times for the Blue Jays during the month of September scouted these Royals. A high hopper, George Bell, who has very deceptive running speed. In fact, this spring in a race with Damaso Garcia, 60 yards, Bell beat him.
Now the DH Cliff Johnson, the only man in the starting lineup tonight for the Blue Jays with any postseason experience. Ball 1 high. They reacquired him from Texas. They let him go as a free agent before the start of the season, partly with a playoff matchup against the Royals in mind. Knowing that Kansas City features those left-handers, they felt they needed some right-handed sock.
The DH spot has been a weak spot for this Blue Jay team. Just 78 RBIs in the year and 13 home runs. The Royals, on the other hand, had 114 runs driven in out of the DH spot.
Well, Cliff Johnson and Al Oliver better do their damage now, because if the Blue Jays make the World Series, they'll have to sit. No DH in the Fall Classic this year.
Jeff Burrows started in this spot for Bobby Cox's Blue Jays this year.
A soft pop into right field, and Sheridan is there. That'll do it. Just as the Royals did in the top of the first, the Blue Jays waste a two-out double and strand a man. No score after one. The dimensions here at Exhibition Stadium, and there are some, and you're one of them, Tony, who think that that right field distance might be off, might be about 10 feet too long.
Well, unofficial measurements by some of the coaching staff of the Blue Jays say that may be off as much as 10 feet down the right field line, and right center's 375, but between the 330 as it's listed 375, it gets to be about 345, 50 feet, and the ball flies out in that area. Prevailing wind, usually what it is right now, blowing across from the left field foul pole to the right field foul pole. It helps balls from right center down the line, kills balls to left field. Interesting thing, Bob, for the media that's come in the left field corner, they've built a big structure that may stop that wind from holding balls down in the left field corner. We'll see as the series progresses. There it is. They paid $700,000 or thereabouts if they buy it. Just releasing it right now. That's Canadian dollars.
Right fielder Pat Sheridan in the top of the second. Garcia to his left. Throws him out.
It'll be interesting to see the mobility of Damaso Garcia. From playing soccer with the Dominican national amateur soccer team, he'd had some looseness in his right knee. Ricky Henderson in that important 3 out of 4 win series for the Blue Jays got a roadblock, jarred his left knee. He's been out of the lineup more than in. For the last few days of the season, he started running better. He's cut down his range defensively and also his stolen base totals.
Frank White with a career-high 22 homers this year. A notorious free swinger. Strike one to him. He walked only 28 times in about 600 plate appearances this year.
He has spread that stance out a little bit and closed it down. Stieb may have that slider tonight. And when he's got it, he's something. Frank White at times, as we look at this swing and a hard slider down and away, batted in the 4th spot to protect the threat. He's got the slider tonight, folks. He might do something.
It's the first strikeout for Stieb as White is sent packing on 3 pitches. There are those who say that he has the American League's best stuff when he's on. Are they right?
Yeah, I think they might be. His fastball runs all over the plate. He throws an occasional change, straight change, overhand curveball for left-handed hitters. But his big pitch just might be the slider. Got that Guidry-type slider, Sparky Lyle.
0-1 to Balboni, who hit 2 of his club record 36 home runs this year off Dave Stieb.
Lee May has really helped this guy. He's made him a little more selective at the plate. They think they can get him out upstairs, in and away upstairs.
Willie Upshaw in foul ground on the Balboni pop, and it's a 1-2-3 inning for Dave Stieb. 1.5 gone by at Exhibition Stadium. No score. No doubt one of the game's best managers, but looking for his first postseason win. He's 0-9 in postseason play as a manager with the Yankees. As we told you, he was swept by Kansas City in 1980. In the strike year of 81, he took over late in the year at Kansas City, got them in against Oakland, and they lost 3 in a row to the A's, and then last year, a superior Detroit team took 3 straight from them, although 2 of the 3 games were close. 1-0 pitch to Jesse Barfield. Line drive into center, and Willie Wilson won't get there. For a big man, Barfield can run. He's stolen 22. They'll have to watch it.
First base coach Billy Smith says of Barfield after his second step, he is in full gear as quick as any base stealer they've got. There's Billy. What a thrill it's got to be for him to be in postseason play. He's a career baseball man.
Jimmy Williams is the coach at third, and some say Williams could be the next manager of the Blue Jays if Bobby Cox goes elsewhere. Cox indicated yesterday he'd like to come back to Toronto, although the rumors persist that Ted Turner will make him an offer to be both the general manager and the manager and return to Atlanta. Upshaw had those severely strained stomach muscles, sustained that injury, just as Garcia injured his knee in that Yankee series in September at Yankee Stadium. Missed 10 or 11 ball games because of it. It hit him.
He looked like he tried to overthrow a fastball, perhaps with one eye on Barfield and one eye on home plate, and the ball just got away from him. Bobby Cox, realizing that 10 of the 12 games these two teams have played between them were decided by 2 or less runs, is playing Upshaw for his defense and hoping he can get a ball in the wind to right field.
Orge looks down at Jimmy Williams in the third base coaching box, but the Blue Jays sacrificed less frequently than any team in the American League this year.
Just 21 times, but Bobby Cox, when they had trouble scoring runs in September, sacrificed a few more times.
Swinging and lining it to left. Lonnie Smith almost in his tracks, has it, and drops it. They may still have the play at third, and they do.
There is a bank of lights. I'm not saying that's what happened to Lonnie Smith. A lot of players come in here, opposition players. Now, he didn't lose his lights. He just let it roll around in that big glove, and it got away. In fact, he had his glove in his hands in front of his face, which may have obstructed his view. I think he blocked himself off on that and didn't really get a good grasp on it, but he did have the foresight to get the lead runner Barfield.
The line that was first applied to Dave Kingman has also been used on Lonnie Smith. He plays left field the way you'd imagine Steve Martin would play Hamlet.
What? What is that you're saying?
Ernie Witt takes a ball.
When Buck Martinez went down, Ernie Witt and Martinez have been the platoon tandem around here for a couple of years. Witt began playing against left and right, had a little bit of an injured right shoulder, hurt his throwing a little bit, and his swinging of the bat. Of course, he hadn't been used to seeing that curveball going away like that.
Witt is one of 3 Blue Jays on the roster selected prior to the '77 season in the expansion draft. Original Blue Jays. Jim Clancy is one, and Garth Ordge the other. Hit sharply and through by the diving Balboni. Here's Sheridan's throw from right field. The Blue Jays have the lead. Upshaw comes across with Toronto's first ever postseason run.
The most popular of the Blue Jays, Ernie Witt, drives in the first run in this league championship series. And with Balboni not being able to get in cutoff position, he was going after the ball, as was White. Garth Ordge keeps on going to third base. It's a good base running team. They've got speed almost throughout that lineup, except for their catcher.
Switch hitting shortstop Tony Fernandez. This is his first full season, but he's not eligible for the Rookie of the Year award. Had a few too many at-bats last year.
Fernandez looked like he was taking his shot. between White and Balboni. See if he can create another first and third. Looking for a pitch up in the strike zone with one out that he can drive and get a sac fly at minimum. He didn't hit it well, but he hit it in a good spot, and it's 2-0 Toronto. Trademark near his wrist, but as you said, he got it by George Brett, who was playing even with a bag on the fast turf. Fernandez is not a weak sister with a bat. He drove in 51 during the season. Ball one to Damaso Garcia, who grounded to short in the first. Right-hander Steve Farr in Dick Hauser's bullpen. So Garcia drives the ball. He doesn't hit a whole lot of home runs, but many times it's the pitch down in the strike zone. There's another base hit. Let's see if Witt can score. No, they stop him. The bases are loaded. Jimmy Williams put up a stop sign, and Witt took heed. Fastball out over the plate, about belt high. Garcia rifles it. The respect for the speed and throwing arm of Sheridan, and of course the catcher Witt running off second base. You don't want to take yourself out of a possible big inning. And that'll bring Gary Blaylock, the pitching coach, out. What you want to do, Bob, with this Kansas City team, there's Bobby Cox, is get into their into their bullpen. That's why Gubas is down there. 4 singles and a hit batter have produced 2 runs, put Dick Hauser in a 2-0 hole, and left the bases loaded with 1 out. You think former Yankee, Boston, Detroit Tiger manager Ralph Houck in Florida isn't beaming with one of his proteges in each dugout? Bobby Cox played for Houck. Dick Hauser was asked to stay in baseball as a coach for Ralph Houck. And look where they are. Mosby hit .348 against Kansas City pitching this year, the best of any Blue Jay, and he had a homer against Liebrandt. Dick Hauser has brought Balboni and Brett in at the corners. With Mosby's feet from the left side, he is so difficult to double up. And all the low-scoring games. Now Balboni asked to come closer. He'll go home, which leaves a lot of territory on that right side if he gets hold of the ball. Popped up, and it's Brett in foul ground. 2 out. But Liebrandt's troubles are far from over. Here comes Bell, who had a bloop double in the first inning. Grounded to short. Biancalana has it. They'll leave the bases loaded, although they score twice. So it's a happy Blue Jay nest, and we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. They do not need the antifreeze tonight in Toronto, despite all those panic stories of the past couple of weeks when it became apparent that the Blue Jays had a good shot at postseason play, and the people here in Toronto are kind of defensive about it. They point out very quickly the average temperatures in mid-October here are just about identical to those in Chicago, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Detroit. So what's the worry? And they also point out that Toronto's actually farther south than Detroit and parts of 4 or 5 other states in the U.S.
Sundberg in the third. We pointed out that Cliff Johnson is the only Blue Jay starter with postseason experience. In contrast, Sundberg is the only Royal starter without it. And with some of those KC players, the postseason experience is considerable. Willie Wilson, George Brett, Hal McRae when he gets in there, Frank White. Chopper down to third, Garth Orge. Guns Sundberg out.
You've got to wonder how much experience means after you've been through what Toronto has, 3 out of 4 in Yankee Stadium with 50,000 plus screaming fans, and losing here on a Friday night and then picking it back up on the Saturday. You played 161, it'll give you experience in a hurry.
Here is Buddy Biancalana coping with dual pressures. Not only opening at shortstop in the League Championship Series, but knowing that all fans of the David Letterman Show are watching his every action closely. He was adopted by David as his favorite Major League player this year. Back when every newspaper was filled with the Pete Rose countdown, how many more hits to catch Cobb, David started a Buddy Biancalana countdown.
In a few weeks, Pete Rose will break Ty Cobb's all-time hit record, but the attention of the baseball world will shift then to another historic record chase. And with this Buddy Biancalana hit counter, you can chart the Royals' veteran utility infielders' march to immortality. All right, let's see. Buddy got a hit, 1 hit last week. All right. Only 4,181 hits to go. Good luck, Buddy. Keep up the good work.
And since Biancalana at this moment has 56 career hits, he's better than 4,100 behind the Georgia Peach.
They've got him in a little bit more of a crouch now from the left side. He's off the plate. He's been striking out a lot. They'd like to see him bunt a little bit more. Do like Fernandez does, hit the ball past the third baseman.
This is not what Stieb had in mind against Biancalana. The count 3-1.
Look at Orge, looking right down Biancalana's throat, taking the bunt away from him.
Full count. What about the alleged arrogance of Dave Stieb? When a light hitter gets a hit off of him or draws a walk that Stieb doesn't want to give up, he's been known to glare at guys once they get down to first base. He fans Biancalana on the high fastball.
He has the same kind of perfectionist temperament, and he shows a lot of emotion, as Jack Morris of the Tigers does. They expect so much from themselves. They expect as much effort from their teammates. Up high in the strike zone, that's the pitch they would like to see Biancalana lay off, cut down his strikeout rate. He is known to throw his glove in the air and all kinds of things. Yell at his infielders, not over the last month.
Lonnie Smith pops it up, and Upshaw will squeeze it. A second consecutive 1-2-3 inning for Dave Stieb, who has now retired 7 consecutive Royals, and he clings to a 2-0 lead. 44-year-old Bobby Cox managed at Atlanta for 4 seasons, 78 through 81, and this is his 4th year at Toronto. What do you make of the stories that have him going back to Dixie? He does live in the Atlanta area.
The writer who wrote the story, a very reliable writer, Jerry Fraley, simply said, I was compiling a list, if Bobby Wine is not there, and Bobby did an outstanding job, of managers that I thought Ted Turner might want back, or want first time. He said, your name was on the top. Bobby Cox said, no truth to it at this point.
Cliff Johnson takes a ball. We told you Dave Phillips is the plate umpire. They use 6, of course, in postseason play. Dale Ford at first, Jim Evans at second, Ted Hendry at third. 1-1 down the left field line, Vic Voltaggio, and in right field, Darrell Cousins. All but Hendry and Cousins have postseason experience. Phillips and Evans have plenty of it. Their 4th league championship series for both of them.
And the head of their association, the Umpires Association, Richie Phillips, a week or so ago, said they might not work. Now, are they going to work the whole thing or just tonight?
Spanked into right center field, and it double for Johnson, who had only one extra base hit in the 5 weeks after they reacquired him from Texas.
Jesse Barfield made a statement, and Cito Gaston, the hitting instructors, have been trying to get the right-handed hitters to do just this. When the left-handers, which are giving them trouble, the right-handed hitters, run the fastball away, go to right center field. In this park, it is a very attractive alley in right center that you can hit the ball out of. But a coach can tell you day and night, but a veteran like Cliff Johnson, if he does it, he can lead the way with his leadership.
Here's Barfield, who started the 2-run second with a single. Shows the bunt and takes a ball. The tendency would be to pitch Barfield away, but you have to be careful because especially in this ballpark, he's a threat to go deep to the opposite field. In fact, Barfield has really done well at home. 59 of his 88 lifetime homers have been hit here.
Even the slugger that Jesse Barfield is, with nobody else running on second, he was trying to take a shot there. He would have taken a shot the other way. That's why he wanted to push the ball the first time on his own. He'll take another shot. They're going to bore the ball down and in if they can. Now he'll hit for himself.
And the rain begins again. And it's not a drizzle. Way outside, and Sundberg saved it.
Cliff Johnson, before that last pitch to Barfield, Commissioner Peter Uberoth, Dick Butler behind him, head of the umpires of the American League. In his honor, Mr. Mulrooney.
Now a full count to Jesse Barfield. Liebrandt against Barfield with Johnson at second. Nobody out. Bottom of the third. Walking.
That may get the bullpen up again for Kansas City.
Brett talking it over with Liebrandt, and now Sundberg joins the conference.
Well, there's Steve Farr, as you said, one more time, and with a left-hander Upshaw up, this may be a bunt situation. You already mentioned that Bobby Cox sacrificed a few times in either league. Upshaw had been playing for a while with a pulled muscle in his side, and so they don't aggravate it this early. He may be on the bunt.
Liebrandt hit Upshaw with a pitch in the second, and he would later regret it. Liner to center. It's in there. Wilson on the short hop. They try for the fourth and second and almost get it, but the bases are loaded.
Willie Wilson, with that great speed, was playing so shallow, neither Johnson on second nor Barfield on first could really take a chance. Barfield did take a chance by not sliding. He had to slow down. Didn't get hurt that way. But Liebrandt's in big trouble. Here comes Dick Hauser to stall for a little more time. Watch Johnson. He almost gets hung up. He said, it's going to fall in, or is it? And Willie Wilson, you don't take many chances with nobody out. That very slow walk by Dick Hauser to give Farr more time in the bullpen. Dick Hauser is going with an 8-man pitching staff. Of course, with the DH, you can afford to do that more than you can in the National League without it.
If Hauser went to Farr right here, would Cox this early in the game counter with Mullenix to bat for Orge?
You betcha. He will do it when he gets a chance. He is not a believer that you wait till a situation in the 8th or 9th because you might not have a chance of scoring. His belief is when you got a chance to score, use every weapon you have to score. Because Orge is a good defensive player, too, and with a lead, he might want to keep Orge in there.
So Charlie Liebrandt, who came in tonight with a career record of 3-0 against Toronto, is finished. And he leaves the bases loaded behind him. Well, we see Steve Farr because Charlie Liebrandt did not go far at all. His earliest exit of the season. And now, as expected, Garth Orge is pulled back, and Rance Mullenix, the left-handed half of their third base platoon, comes on.
They're in at the corners for Kansas City again. Double play depth in the middle of the diamond.
Bases loaded, nobody out. Ball one.
The platoon tandem at third has been something. Orge and Mullich, between them, they've driven in 93 runs, hit 17 home runs, and walked 76 times. He uses the entire field, the left field corner as well as the right field corner, Mullich.
Into center field, Willie Wilson won't get it. Everybody moves up one station. And it's 3-0 Toronto with the bases still loaded. And the Royals must be feeling a sensation somewhat like being bitten to death by ducks. There have not been too many sharply hit balls. A sinker here, a blooper, or a flare there, a hit batter. It adds up to 3-0 and more trouble with the bases loaded.
Well, Kansas City, anytime you come into the open of the opposition city away, you want to go away with at least the split. I think the Steve Farr story is an interesting one. Tracy Ringlesby, a sports writer from Kansas City, an astute one, put a bug in the ear of Johnny Sherholz, the general manager, the manager Dick Hauser. They plucked him back out of the minor leagues. He was kind of lost in the Cleveland system for a while. He decided he did a good job.
Witt had a single his first time. Fernandez is on deck. Off-speed pitch for a called strike. Two and one.
Bullpen's up again for Kansas City.
Three balls and a strike.
Mark Gubazov begins to throw in the starting rotation this year. In short series and off days, he can help out in long or middle relief.
He walked him to force in a run.
During the regular season, Steve Farr in 37 2/3 innings walked 20, so you can see he can have control problems.
There is Willie Wilson's reaction as ball four missed outside to force in the fourth run. Fernandez takes the ball down low. Whose handling of the young pitching staff has been a huge plus this year for Kansas City, goes out to speak with Farr. When you ask General Manager John Sherholz or Manager Dick Hauser about the improvement from last year's team at 184 to this year's, they managed to win 91, they generally cite three things: the addition of Lonnie Smith, the addition of Sundberg and his handling of the young staff, and the super season by Brett after an off year in '84. 2-1.
Fernandez, although he didn't hit many home runs, only a couple this year, will surprise you if you throw the ball inside and down to him with his power from the left side. They think someday he might hit 15 home runs.
He hits this one right on the nose, but Sheridan will catch it. The runner tags at third and scores. It's 5-0 Toronto. The Blue Jays got 2 in the second and 3 here in the third. Off-speed pitch and a little bloop. Balboni got it.
You've got Steve throwing the way he was in this ball game. He has set down 7 in a row to this point. The third after Brett's double in the first after 2 outs. And with Tom Hinkie down there, the Terminator, and that strong bullpen, this lead, I'm not saying it's safe, but it'll be hard to come back.
In the air to deep center, Willie Wilson, short of the track, makes the catch. But Toronto scores 3 more times in the bottom of the third. And with the cheers ringing in their ears, they lead it 5-0. The fact that the folks from Riptide are part of our audience tonight, you know, these two franchises, Tony, are almost models for how to build a team, an expansion franchise. In the third year of the Royals' existence, 1970, I guess, Bob Lemon had them over 500. They were a contender. And here is Toronto in their 9th year of existence in the League Championship Series.
First time that 2 expansion teams have met in postseason play. Pat Gillick, the executive vice president, general manager, just snatched players from other organizations, especially the Yankees, to build, plucked people off other rosters. He's been something. And John Sherholz, through the drug thing last year, along with Dick Hauser, had to have a lot of patience, and they've come back too. Kansas City's been a good team last year and this year from August through September, although they had a little bit of lull in September early.
Willie Wilson against Stieb in the top of the 4th with the Royals trailing 5-0. A roller down to Upshaw, takes it himself.
It's right there what they want to do to Willie Wilson. Remember, the Philadelphia Phillies in that World Series, they just kept running that fastball in as hard as they could. Not much off-speed stuff to Wilson. Striking him out or breaking his back.
The third baseman, number 5, George Brett.
Earlier, we mentioned Brett's .338 career mark in League Championship Series play. When you turn on the spotlight, this guy responds. In 9 All-Star games, he's a .318 lifetime hitter. In his only World Series against the Phillies in 1980, he hit .375. Got the inside corner, 1-1.
Think about Dave Stieb, and of course this is a 5-0 ball game right now, but Dave Stieb enjoys the challenge of pitching to good hitters. Doyle Alexander might try and pitch around Brett, even a Jimmy Key, the left-hander, but Stieb will go right after you.
With his .335 performance this year, Brett has raised his lifetime mark 2 points to .316. He's hit over 309 times. Another base hit for him. A sharp line drive into right center. Barfield cuts it off. He has a great arm, and trailing 5-0. Brett puts all the factors together and holds.
That's what this defensive outfield does so well. Cut the gaps down. That's how Pat Gillick tried to build this team. All-round speed, not just for the offense, but the overlooked element of speed, saving doubles, triples, as Barfield just did.
Orta has been with the White Sox, the Indians, the Dodgers, Toronto for a year, and now Kansas City. Blue Jays traded him to KC last year for Willie Aikens. Aikens played at Toronto's farm at Syracuse this year.
That's what the radar gun just clocked, that last pitch from Dave Stieb. I don't know if that's a faster gun or slower gun. It's not just the speed of Dave Stieb. That's 90. Took a little bit off behind 2-0. It's what he calls his batting practice fastball.
90 is a batting practice fastball?
That pitch wasn't 90. That was an inaccurate reading, I believe.
I thought so, too. It looked considerably slower than the one before.
He'll do that. He knows the guy's taking it. Say, here, hit it. I've got a lead, or I know you're taking it, and he just got away from it.
3-1 pitch. Upshaw over for a look, as is Witt. It's out of play, and the count is full.
The thing about Steve is he can crackle that slider, and it breaks so late. sometimes in the high 80s. He found Orta. He was behind him 3-0 and really unleashed some heat to strike him out on that pitch. Now that was 90 plus. I believe that one. That crackled. You could hear it pound into Ernie Witt's glove.
The right fielder, number 15, Pat Sheridan.
He came back from being behind. He says, here, go ahead and hit it. And he got it in a great spot, inside part of the plate.
Gene Mauch, the Angels manager, who did another terrific job this year, had a line about Stieb. He said, boy, he's good, but no one is as good as Stieb thinks he is. Two 2-0 to Sheridan. Brett is at first with 2 outs. He's behind Sheridan just as he was Orta, 3-0.
Part reason Sheridan is batting in the 5 spot. He's hit Stieb fairly well in his career. Sheridan, of course, and Darryl Motley had outstanding years for the Royal last year, and they really suffered this year early.
Foul ball. He walked him on the 3-2 pitch. First walk yielded by Stieb, who has struck out 3.
Second baseman, number 20, Frank White.
Stieb, as you mentioned, was an outfielder. Virtually no pitching experience until he embarked upon his professional career at SIU Carbondale. He was an All-America candidate as an outfielder who hit close to 400 one season.
Former Blue Jay manager, the oldest rookie manager ever in the major leagues, Bobby Maddock, and Al Lamacchia, another vice president and scout, changed him when they saw him hit and said, that arm, we're going to make him a pitcher. Frank White with 2 outs, 2 men out, knows one thing, down 5-0. He's going to look for a pitch up till 2 strikes that he can get hold of and try and get the Blue Jays, or rather the Royals, back in this game. Wind's blowing in from left field.
Hit hard and backhanded by Mullenix, who has replaced Orge at third, and he goes to the bag for the force on Brett. Stieb congratulates Mullenix on the run-saving play. The Royals leave a couple and still trail 5-0 after 3.5.
Frank White was trying to pull the ball. Stieb threw a slider low and away. Didn't hit it hard, but a race to the bag of the 2 defensive third basemen. Orge a little bit better. Mullenix the better hitter. Although Garth Orge has had an outstanding year with the bat this year. Really been a producer.
Steve Farr in relief of Charlie Liebrandt. Bottom half of the 4th. It'll be Bell, Cliff Johnson, and Barfield.
Bell's a good low ball hitter. They want to keep the ball up if they can.
Up the middle, Biancalana can't get it. George Bell is 2 for 3.
Designated hitter, 0-0, Cliff Johnson.
Sundberg sets up low and away. George Bell, and so many times, good low fastball hitters are also good breaking ball hitters if they go with the pitch. Biancalana can't get to it. And do not sell George Bell short. He has a very high stolen base percentage, and they will hit and run with a Cliff Johnson. He's got pretty good bat control.
Off-speed pitch, he checked his swing. Biancalana comes in. Johnson doesn't run well.
Here goes Bell.
Going for third. Brett can't get back, and it's over his head. Brett had gone toward the hole. Biancalana wound up making the play, and he got Johnson at first. And then Bell, noticing that Brett would have trouble getting back to third, challenged Balboni. One corks a wild throw. Brett had no chance at all. And Bell runs a run home.
George Bell, Brett was there in time. Usually your first baseman has the weakest throwing arm on the field. George Bell, who very aggressively on a high hopper to the outfield in the first, went to second, challenged the arms. He set the tone of aggressiveness for this team. You do that in the first inning as he did, and now again in the fourth, you're going to get rid of your team's jitters in a hurry if they had any to start with.
Two and two to Barfield, who last year platooned a bit with Dave Collins. Collins moved on to Oakland, of course, in the Bill Caudle transaction. Curveball hit into right center field. Sheridan going back, and he's got it.
Now that ball tied Jesse Barfield up inside a hanging breaking ball. Look at where it went to right center field. That ball is so lively, and he is so strong. Watch George Bell. He sees Biancalana and Brett off the bag, and he accelerates. So his knee, and he's had radical knee surgery at one time in his career, is obviously not bothering him anymore. Did he take off and put on the speed?
And he apparently has decided that he'll challenge the Royals at every opportunity. He did the same thing in the first on a blue pit that should have been a single. He just ran it into a double. Into center field, Willie Wilson comes on. Technically, this will be an earned run because if Bell is assumed to have been safe at third, and that would be the logical assumption, he would have scored on Barfield's fly ball. So not an unearned run, although there was an error in the inning. We'll be right back after these messages from your local station. A lack of run support has frequently plagued Dave Stieb. No such complaints tonight. He's ahead 6-0 as he goes to the fifth and faces Balboni. Dick Hauser says of Balboni, I can't tell when he's in a slump. He swings so hard, so aggressively at everything, I just figure if he can get it airborne, it's going out. So I don't worry.
Was it last year we were in Kansas City, and he went off and got married? Nobody even knew of it. Somebody from the Justice of Peace office or somewhere called and said, hey, you got a guy named Balboni from Kansas City Royals? He's just down here getting married. Never told his teammates. He's so quiet, they call him Bones. Out of the Yankee system. In fact, the man who will eventually own the entire Kansas City Royals, Mr. Avron Fogelman, minor league team down south, and wanted Balboni as an authentic slugger. And when he bought part of the interest from Mr. and Mrs. Kaufman, they said, we need a guy who can hit the ball long ways and generates excitement. They went out and got Bones.
On Balboni, here's the good, 36 homers, 88 RBIs, the bad, 243, and the ugly, 166 strikeouts. And there's another one.
Took something off his breaking ball. Stieb will throw a curve and a slider. And do a bunch of things with that fastball. He just took something off it. It was more of a slurve than the hard slider.
Jim Sundberg.
The downer. That was the curveball. He's got 4 good pitches. So often during the course of a game, he'll only use 2.
Sundberg grounded to third his first time. Six times a Gold Glove winner. Always a workhorse behind the plate. Many seasons where he caught over 150 games.
Warm-up action is getting hot and heavy now in the Royals bullpen, so perhaps Steve Farr is done for the day.
The 1 pitch to Sundberg.
Heard so much that the ball is so much livelier this year than last year. Sundberg hit a ball. He's a strong guy, but he's never been known for a lot of power numbers. Dead center field in Kansas City about 430.
Look at that curveball. I mean, we're talking vapor lock when you see that baby coming. It seemed to start about 30 feet up the third baseline.
This ball absolutely paralyzes Jim Sundberg. Watch him get back on his heels. It was thrown so hard. Stieb cracked off a beauty. Watch Dave Stieb's reaction. Boy, when he is up, more three-quarters and sidearm, you can see the downward movement.
Biancalana grounds to Upshaw. Another easy inning for Stieb, featuring his 4th and 5th strikeouts. 3 Eastern time with Game 2 of this series, and then at 8 Eastern time, it gets underway in the National League, and what a pitching matchup in Game 1. John Tudor for the Cards, Fernando Valenzuela for the Dodgers, although L.A. has some concern, Tony, about that sore ankle for Fernando. It hampered him in the last month.
Mark Gubicza, who had just 1 relief outing, but Dick Hauser was elected to go at this point with 4 starters and put Gubicza to help out. Some say of this really brilliant young starting staff they have that Gubicza and maybe Danny Jackson have the best raw stuff. Gubicza can have control problems. Look at this. He's really getting it up there.
Gubicza is a Philadelphia product, born and raised there. 6'5" and 210. Mullenix skies one to right center. Sheridan and Wilson, and it's Sheridan just short of the track.
Now, like Barfield, Gubicza that tied Barfield up. Look where that ball went in this part. It's warning track, and it was a hack, a tomahawk swing. That ball is really lively. In fact, was it this weekend we were sitting with the brilliant pitching coach Marcel Latchman of the California Angels. We set 2 new balls in the corner. We turned away and talked for a while. We looked back, and there were 8 sitting there. Balls pulsating inside, a rabbit ball.
Have you conducted your own scientific tests?
No. Observation, my man. Balls are handcuffed from infielders with good hands. They're coming so hard on the ground.
We talked about Tudor and Valenzuela, Game 1 tomorrow night in the National League out at Dodger Stadium. Tomorrow afternoon here, a pair of left-handers, Bud Black, who won 17 last year and dipped to 10 and 15 this year for Kansas City. Jimmy Key, who finally gave Bobby Cox a good left-hander in the rotation, something they've been searching for several years. At 14 and 6, he'll be Toronto's starter.
Jim Key came out of spring training. He really was going to be the 5th starter. Then Luis Leal was sent down, not active. He threw 1 pitch. Now, that was 93. He 1 pitch early in the count to Witt and 1 to Mullenix. That may have been in the mid-90s.
Another fastball has popped up. Easy chance for Brett. There are some who say that Brett may win the Gold Glove this year, and his improvement defensively has been overshadowed by another great season with the bat. George came to training camp about 15, 20 pounds lighter than in 1984, and losing that weight helped his quickness.
Remember when he started off slowly with the bat in spring training, everybody said he was underweight, he had lost his strength. It lasted about 2 or 3 weeks before his bat caught on. I'll tell you another improvement. His good buddy with the Red Sox, Boggs, Wade Boggs, has really become to be a very, very good third baseman defensively.
What was the Wade Boggs quote when they were neck and neck in the batting race? Wade said, 2 hits a day keeps the doctor away. And in this case, the doctor is George Brett. And Boggs did outdistance him. Fernandez rolls to his opposite number, shortstop Buddy Biancalana, and he made it close at first base, but it's a 1-2-3 inning for Gubicza out of the bullpen. After 5, Toronto 6, Kansas City zip.
Structure in the background is the CN Tower, the tallest freestanding structure in the world. If you ever want to come up for vacation, folks, it's a lovely city. Toronto, the people are great. A lot of culture, sights. I'm going to take Bob Costas to the opera one day when he comes here, show him a little culture. About 10 million people within a 100-mile radius of the Toronto area, and what, about 25 million throughout all of Canada?
That's just what I need to broaden my horizons with you as my guide. Here is Stieb delivering to Smith, and ball 1 outside, Delani.
They want to bust the fastball inside on him, go away with a breaking ball. Mullenix tied at third in case he tries to drop a bunt down.
Curveball hit into left center field, and George Bell glides over. 1 out.
Dave Stieb now with the 6-0 lead is going to just try and stay in a groove. Not just throw strikes and get out of his pattern, but throw strikes with something on it. Try and stay ahead in the count. In fact, if Bobby Cox's plans hold the way he wants it. He'd like to go with 3 starters. If Stieb has a low-pitch game, or he gets a reliever in, he might be able to do that.
Mullinex creeps in at third, with Wilson a threat to bunt. 2 quick strikes. Dave Phillips is in good voice tonight.
Dave Stieb learned an awful lot from Al Widmar, the pitching coach, but also Doyle Alexander in this staff. It's like having a second pitching coach. He knows how to dissect the lineup, and he really wants to get Wilson out. They got him. And Brett come to the plate without a man on base.
They checked with Ted Hendry down at third, and Wilson is a goner. 6th strikeout for Stieb.
I didn't think he went after it, but a replay may disprove it. It's a breaking ball way inside. Now, the bat crossed the plate, but did he break the wrist? Depends which way an umpire's going to call it. I don't think that's a swing. He has checked it, and the body has gone around, but he's really checked the bat part and the hands part.
More often than not, you're going to see that called a strike these days in the major leagues. To no one's surprise, this guy has both hits off Stieb. And both were really scorched. A double off the wall in dead center in the first, and a line single to right center in the fourth.
It appears on this series of pitches, Stieb is going to run the fastball away to Brett and say, okay, if you want to hit it, you're going to hit it to left field or center field. I'm not going to let you pull it and turn on it.
Good curveball.
Backdoored him. Because Brett, as he's gotten stronger, he's gotten that weight shift the late Charlie Lau talked about. He can drive the ball in the left center and dead center field. He hit one to dead center about 450 the other day. Wow.
Called third strike.
When Stieb charged up, he just bolted off the pitcher's rubber.
And that's the flip side. Some say he's sullen when things don't go his way, but he's so exuberant when he's in a groove, like now. With his power, 30 homers, and a league-leading slugging percentage, Brett seldom strikes out, only 49 times all year, a remarkable figure. But with stuff like Stieb is flashing tonight, even the best of them can be victims. Watch Brett's reaction on that curveball that got him. He'll look it back into the glove and then glance back at Davey Phillips as if to say, he couldn't have caught me looking on that one. Could he?
Pete Rose does it. Wade Boggs does it. Late Charlie Lau called it head discipline. Try and see the ball hit the bat. Don't pull your head off. Sounds simple, tough to do.
Garcia leading it off in the bottom of the 6th. 6-0 Toronto. Sheridan with a chance in right, and he has it. So Garcia is 1 for 4, and that'll bring up Mosby, who's 0 for 3. A chopper to short. Biancalana on the high hop, has to hurry, and got him barely.
That's a sign running that hard that Lloyd Mosby, for the rest of this series, it appears that his hamstring pull, it was a nagging thing over the last month as well, because he got down the line in a hurry.
The left fielder, number 11, George Bell.
Is this fella George Bell the Blue Jays MVP?
He was the first 4 months, and as Rick Dempsey said with Dick Enberg in the pregame spot, Barfield might have been. Bobby Cox has said he thinks Dennis Lamp is, for what he's done in middle relief. I think Tony Fernandez has hit around 290 all year and fielded out of sight.
The key for the Blue Jays, balance. No one is having what is likely to be a career year for him, but everybody has contributed. No 20-game winner. In fact, only one pitcher won as many as 15. That was Doyle Alexander. Nobody in the top 5 in any of the major offensive categories. In the air to right, Sheridan coming toward the line, loses his cap but not the ball. The Blue Jays didn't have any all-star starters, and yet only the Cardinals in all of baseball had a better record. We'll be right back after these messages from your local station. With all the concern about the possible weather conditions up here in mid and late October, we might note that baseball can't wait to get into Denver, and rightfully so. They'll be a great Major League franchise, and yet in Denver, it snowed heavily 2 weeks ago. It was still September then. They got 5 or 6 inches.
One year in Denver, we went on a road trip in June, and they had about a foot of snow in June. Came out of the mountains, gone a couple days later.
Stieb has been close to untouchable. Orta fouls it back.
You know, Dave Stieb has had an extra day rest. He's been pitching on the 5th day all season, a couple of times with 3 days rest. He was fearful he would be too strong and not have the strike zone under control. He's still popping the ball well.
Orta reaches for it and bounces it to Garcia. A little flip to Upshaw for the first out.
He got a great pitch here. He just throws a fastball about low 90s, and then he comes over the top, a pitch that he's developed with Al Widmeyer specifically for left-handed hitters. Off-speed overhand curve. Rarely does he throw that to a right-handed hitter. He'll throw the hard slider or sidearm curve.
So Stieb is working with the extra day's rest tonight, but might come back on 3 days rest in Game 4. So that if it went 7, conceivably Bobby Cox could use him 1-4-7.
Jim Clancy, has been on and off the disabled list a couple times this year, has been sent out, at this point anyway, in long or middle relief, because that's a department they've been very strong at this year, the Blue Jays.
Dick Hauser will go with 4 starters. Liebrandt, who was knocked out early tonight, Bud Black tomorrow, Saberhagen in Game 3 at KC, and then Danny Jackson in Game 4. There's strikeout number 8. Sheridan with a brief disagreement with Dave Phillips. But Phillips is not their problem. This guy is.
Strikeout number 8. And when you've got a guy throwing in the low 90s with Steve's movement and spotting the ball, and he can throw that, nothing you can look for but the fastball off this kind of stuff, and he'll get a lot of called third strikes. He's done that already today.
Well hit by Frank White, but George Bell is there to take it. It's the 3rd consecutive 1-2-3 inning for Stieb, who's now retired 10 in a row.
The following message is furnished by Major League Baseball.
1985 has been a great year for me and a record-breaking year for the family of baseball. Like any family, we've had our share of problems, and we're working hard to solve them. But we've had some great performances, too. Just take that young man in St. Louis, and that kid on the mound in New York, and that youngster like myself in Houston. From all of us in the family of baseball to all you families who cheered for us, thank you for sharing a great season.
Major League Baseball, a family tradition. Share it all.
7th inning stretch time, and the organist chimes in with OK Blue Jays, the theme song here, and that's the cue for one of Tony Kubek's personal favorites, the mascot, B.J. Bird, to pounce up on top of the dugout and lead the cheers.
Kevin Shanahan's doing all right now. I like him. He's staying out of the action a little bit more. Kids love him. These fans have had to learn how to have fun at the ballpark because they lost 100-plus ball games a few years in a row. They were a very, let's say, sedate crowd, quiet.
There's B.J. Bird. You know, Toronto fans were once so docile that Sparky Anderson swears that he once came out of the dugout to make a pitching change, turned around and told the crowd near the dugout to be quiet, and they complied. That wouldn't happen today. Danny Jackson is throwing down in the Kansas City bullpen, but I assume he's just loosening up.
Tuned up for the opener in Kansas City. For the off day.
He'd go in Game 4, which would be Saturday. The opener in KC would be Saberhagen, Game 3. Two and two to Cliff Johnson.
You know, that may be something being forced by California, that day game on Saturday. Have Saberhagen pitch Saturday night for the clincher. Takes the start of this series if it goes 7 away from Saberhagen, who's been their ace.
Cliff Johnson went around and strikes out to open the 7th.
You look fastball off Kubas also. When he gets a curve, even though this is way out of the strike zone, he gets Cliff Johnson. You know, the granddaddy on this staff started this ball game. Charlie Liebrandt. You look at the other kids, Saberhagen, early 20s, Jackson, same way. Gubas the same way. Black's not ancient. They're going to be around a while if they can keep signing them. And Avron Fogelman, new owner, been signing some lifetime deals with some of these players.
Bud Black, tomorrow's pitcher for Kansas City, finally got on the beam with a big win, a 4-0 shutout in that series against California. He'll be pitching with a full week's rest. Out of play. He did not have a good year, but he did throw exceptionally well in his last outing. In the Toronto bullpen, a right-hander is throwing. It looks like Jim Acker, and Bobby Cox is thinking maybe with a big lead, and Stieb having thrown 84 pitches. And with his plan to use Stieb on 3 days rest to try and pitch him as many as 3 times in the series, Bobby may be thinking, what the heck, I'll get Acker in there and give Stieb a couple innings rest. Not extend him too far. Barfield draws a 1-out walk.
Dave Stieb with hitting instructor Cito Gaston. Is Stieb charged up? He can't wait to get back out on the mound.
Folks, as you know, this telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. Upshaw takes the ball. The Blue Jays with 2 in the 2nd, 3 in the 3rd, and 1 in the 4th. They lead it 6-0. And Stieb has allowed only 2 hits through 7 innings of work, a double and a single by Brett.
You just saw a changeup from Gubazan. That's something that pitching coach Gary Blaylock's had to work on with these kids. Saberhagen has a good one. Of course, Liebrandt learned in the minor leagues. But the Gubazas and the Jacksons, hard throwers, a little tougher to teach it to.
Leisurely toss. We mentioned that only the Cardinals had a better record than Toronto this year. Whitey Herzog's team was 101-61. Toronto won 99 for the season. And their bid for their 100th was denied as Phil Niekro won his 300th.
That's it! Holy cow, what a way to end it! A strikeout gets his 300th career win, and I tell you, this is really an exciting moment.
Gubazan knows that Barfield at first base, also a steal threat. Keep thinking that it's going to be Mosby who leads the club with 37 or Garcia with 28. Barfield has stolen 22 and been caught just 8 times. You don't expect sluggers to do that. Bobby Cox usually runs in these situations. You can probably count on it.
There he goes. Swing and a miss. Throw by Sundberg. He stole it. So Upshaw fans as Barfield's field second.
One of the reasons that Barfield's all-around play has improved so, not only the bat, defensively, the throwing, he knows he's going to be in the lineup every day. I believe that ball, or the glove with the ball in it, hit his elbow or left arm. Picks up the ball in case it's put into play so he wouldn't be doubled off. But he doesn't have to worry anymore about being platoon as he was for a few years here, and if he goes 0 for 4, he might not play the next day. He's really been in the flow of the pennant race all year.
Bobby Cox's team took up residence in first place on May 13th, and they never checked out of the penthouse, although they were threatened. Their lead, which was 9.5 over the Yankees on August 3rd, shrunk to 1.5 after they lost the first game of that 4-game series at Yankee Stadium on September 12th. Biancalana gloves the soft liner, and that takes care of Rance Mullenix and the Blue Jays in the 7th. Stieb and company lead it 6-0. We'll be back.
There's your line score with Toronto leading in Game 1 of the ALCS, 6-0. Dave Stieb has now a string of 10 consecutively retired. He had 9 earlier in the ball game. When you strike out 8 and he's walked just 1, Bobby Cox may not want to push him too far so he can come back. And this man, who's become the stopper when he came up in August, Tom Henke. They call him the Terminator. Terminator South, I guess. Jeff Reardon in Montreal, and Terminator North. He can throw hard.
Balboni, Sundberg, and Biancalana due up in the top of the 8th. Ball 1 to the native of Brockton, Massachusetts. Yet another Brockton belter, joining Rocky Marciano and marvelous Marvin Hagler. Curveball is lofted to center. Mosby calls and puts it away.
The catcher, number 8, Jim Sundberg.
I believe that was a hanging curveball. Balboni got on 3-2. He's up in the strike zone out over the plate. And the little change of speeds had him a little out in front. Got 2 people throwing in the bullpen now for Toronto.
Gary Lavelle is up. Left-hander who had some shoulder soreness, and they were doubting whether or not he'd be able to make it in postseason, but they decided yesterday to activate him. Elbow rather than the shoulder.
He's had 1 cortisone shot that popped out again on him in Detroit last week, so they had to make a critical decision. One of that left-hander down there, so they chose him instead of Steve Davis, the youngster. Gary Lavelle over from the National League. He hasn't been able to break that slider off this year, and he's been inconsistent at times. He may be just loosening up to see how the elbow has reacted, throwing a couple days in a row.
1-2 pitch. Curveball hit into left center. Mosby and Bell. Shaker wants it, and he has it.
Three outfielders who can throw, who can chase down the ball in the gaps. Bell and Barfield have been excellent with the bats all year, and Mosby has struggled.
Biancalana is now called back, and here comes the veteran pinch hitter, sometime DH, Dane Orge. Yes, that was his brother Garth, who started at third base for Toronto. It's the first time in League Championship Series history that brothers have opposed one another. Of course, it's happened in World Series play. Fleet and Ken Boyer in 1964, and perhaps a couple other cases. But this is the first time in the playoffs. Dane is the older of the two. You may recall the great...
That's Garth in the middle, Jeff Ross, the equipment man, and Jim Clancy taking a snooze with a mustache on the left of your screen.
Fouled off with Witt coming back and running out of room. You may recall the great World Series Dane Orge had as a designated hitter for the Cardinals in 1982. He had 9 hits in that series against the Brewers.
Did the Prime Minister, one of his aides, or the Commissioner get that foul ball? One of his party did.
It was in their vicinity.
Prime Minister Mulroney standing up in the dark coat. Baseball Commissioner Peter Uberoff. Left center, low on your screen, Mr. Lee MacPhail, who probably did more to solve the impending strike. It turned out to be a mini strike. If not for Mr. MacPhail, it would have been longer. In fact, they're going to have the Leland MacPhail Trophy awarded to the winner of this playoff.
Well hit by Dane Orge, and that is up the gap for extra bases. It'll be a pinch hit double for Dane Orge.
Steve now doesn't have the wicked breaking stuff he had most of the ball game. Who are you pulling for, Garth? You think Mom isn't torn? Their mother has said that she kind of secretly is pulling for the Blue Jays. Onyx Concepcion on the pinch run for Orge.
number 2, Onyx Concepcion.
Well, with the score 6-0, Garth Orge can afford to be pleased for his big brother.
And didn't the Orge brothers make one of David Letterman's list the other day as the 2 most unusual 1 and 2 names in baseball, and Rance Mullenix was like 6th on the list?
I thought Mark Funderburk was up there, as well as Billy Joe Robideau. Lonnie Smith with a drive to center that chases Mosby almost to the warning track, but he makes the graceful catch. No runs, a hit. Only the third. Stieb is allowed, and a man is left.
Onyx Concepcion stays in the ballgame at shortstop. He pinch ran. And Dick Hauser with his 6-run deficit. He's going to bring on Danny Jackson, scheduled to be a starter, but I think he feels, hey, I'd like to get as many of these kids' feet wet this year in postseason play, get over what might turn out to be further jitters. Jackson overpowering. Good fastball. Keeps one of those players, Bob, pitchers who, when the ball is down, has great movement on it, and a hard slider also.
Hauser also has to keep in mind that Jackson last worked 6 days ago. Check it, 5 days ago. Thursday night, in the last of those 4 games against California, when the Royals won 3 of 4 from the Angels, so he needs a little bit of a tune-up outing here.
Jackson gave up 11 hits in that ballgame against California, but he did not walk anybody, which turned out to be a little key pitching against Gene Mock's Angels. Cut down their on-base percentage.
3-2 to Ernie Witt. And the quiz. He's led the American League in saves 5 of the last 6 seasons. The only time he didn't, the strike year of 1981. Slapped down at first. Balboni fields it and throws to Jackson covering. Balboni is not mobile, but he has pretty good hands.
Who was it described Balboni as a condominium? Is he big?
Some quipster.
Wasn't you, I take it? You would have claimed it immediately.
The shortstop, number 1, Tony Fernandez.
Here's Tony Fernandez. Interesting about him in that, in your opinion, and you see him frequently, Tony, he is already the best defensive shortstop in the American League. But his detractors will say, as he pokes one up the middle for a one-out single, that he made 30 errors this year, and only Julio Franco of the Indians made more among all American League shortstops.
Well, Buddy Biancalana and Onyx Concepcion, the two have shared the job for Dick Hauser's Kansas City Royals, made 31 between them. And this guy, I think, gets to more balls than either of them.
On
he
the
makes
other hand,
some throwing, flip throws that get away. He's only 23, first full year.
Garcia finds the hole, first pitch swinging. Fernandez will stop at second. Garcia is now 2 for 5. On the other hand, continuing the conversation about Fernandez, his fabulous range makes up for a lot of the errors. In contrast, you have a guy like rookie Ozzie Guillen for the White Sox. He made fewer than 15 errors this year, and some would say he's the best.
Now, Bobby Cox is going to put in another one of those products, a shortstop from the Dominican Republic, San Pedro de Macorís. 20-year-old switch hitter Manny Lee to try and take some of the duress off Garcia's knee. They drafted him when he was left unprotected by the Houston Astros. Houston had gotten him from the Mets organization. Epi Guerrero, the Latin American scout. Boy, does he scout those countries down there. Great talent evaluator.
Of course, when we evaluate the defensive prowess of shortstops, we're only talking about the American League. When you expand it to the major leagues overall, the conversation begins and ends with Ozzie Smith.
Well, Sparky Anderson made a comment about that. He said if you would put Fernandez at his age and Smith at his age right now and say, who would you want? You would find a lot of managers would say, over the long haul, Tony Fernandez. Talking age, offensive production, although Ozzie's had an outstanding offensive year this year.
Jackson makes quick work of Mosby, striking him out on 3 pitches.
There's George. George Sparky Anderson, who last year just ran through postseason play. Defeated these Kansas City Royals 3-0. San Diego took him to, what, 5 games?
Sparky has no clout. He couldn't get a seat in the better section of the press box. They put him way out in the boondocks. One bad year, and look what happens. 2 on, 2 out. Bell has 2 hits. Slow roller down to White. 6-time Gold Glover throws Bell out. The Blue Jays don't score, but they sit comfortably with a 6-0 lead. We continue tomorrow with Game 2. Jimmy Key against Bud Black at 3 Eastern Time, and then Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola swing into action from Dodger Stadium. Game 1. Eagerly anticipated series. The Cardinals and the Dodgers. Tudor opens against Valenzuela at 8 Eastern Time.
Mandy Lee stays in the ball game. Then transfer Damaso Garcia, and here he comes, Tom Henke. He's going to light the radar gun up if he's throwing like he has very often in September and August. Gets it up there about 95.
The Blue Jays got Henke from the compensation pool after Texas signed Cliff Johnson as a free agent. The Blue Jays were entitled to a selection out of that pool, and Texas didn't protect Henke. Wilson lines a leadoff single to center. Now, if you're sitting in the Texas front office now with Cliff Johnson gone, how do you view that transaction? Wouldn't you much rather have Henke?
It's hard to let an arm like this get away. Henke tried the split-fingered fastball, forkball, if you will, on Willie Wilson. He rifled it to center field. It's been a pitch he worked on in a winter baseball in Venezuela to try and get left-handers out. Also throws a slider. Mainly it's heat. Henke will be the last player ever at this point, I believe, taken out of that compensation draft. That was the big strike issue, the 50-some-day strike. Neither side bothered about it. Upshaw playing behind Wilson.
That was the big deal in '81, and then it just went away in the new negotiations. Brett is 3 for 4. Wilson will streak to third. 5 hits for the Royals, and 3 of them belong to George Brett, who came in with a career league championship batting average of .338 and obviously has hiked it considerably tonight.
And Ernie Witt is going to go out and stall for time because Bobby Cox isn't going to take any chance of letting this lead get away. He saw that so often the 2 or 3 years prior to this one. So Dennis Lamp, who's been so excellent in long and middle relief, with 11-0 record, gets tossing softly. They really struggled out of the bullpen, and Bobby Cox has said many times this year when asked the biggest improvement on your ball club, he said without a doubt the bullpen. Remember, Caudle hasn't done what they thought he would, nor has Lavelle.
So Stieb allowed only 3 hits, striking out 8 and walking 1 through 8. Henke allows singles to the first 2 men he faces.
Stieb had a big lead shutout a couple of times in these situations and lost them. Once Minnesota, once Cleveland.
Orta with a fly ball down the right field line. Barfield into the bullpen, has room. Wilson's not coming home because of the score and because of that guy's arm. He had 21 outfield assists this year, the most in the American League.
He found the bullpen so he wouldn't run over the humps. Thing about him, he's always had the strong arm. Bobby Dorr, their hitting instructor for many years, when he first saw him, said, watch this kid throw. He's going to have one of the best. It was inconsistent. He'd overthrow cutoff, and not anymore. He's usually right on the money. He's become a complete player.
Fastball blown right by Pat Sheridan. Tom Henke is from Taos, Missouri, a town so tiny, population less than 1,000, that they have no local newspaper. And so they post his updated statistics on a bulletin board at the grocery store.
Upstairs is where his ball really takes off. If you go after that pitch from the belt on up, last 2 are 92, appeared to be a lot harder. He's throwing harder than Stieb was, and Stieb had it up to, what, 92?
I don't trust this gun.
Cuba's a 93. It can be inconsistent. Some things deflect off screens and forkball.
Upshaw gets 1. Henke covers. Safe. He couldn't hold the ball, and they don't have the shutout. Wilson comes across with what appears to be a consolation run.
Willie Upshaw's pretty good as the ball pops up on the 3-6-3 or 3-6-1. This artificial surface is the same as in Kansas City and St. Louis, but it does not have the extensive drainage system. And when they put it in last February, the ground is heaved, and there's some soft spots. The turf has come loose, some humps. You don't always get consistent hops on this turf.
Breaking ball outside, and now, although some are heading for the exits, most of those who remain get up on their feet. Looking at 0-10 as a postseason managerial record, which is coincidence. It has nothing to do with competence. He's one of the game's best. One strike away. And everybody up. Count to Frank White. Mosby in center field. Tracks it down. Just a murmur of protest from the Royals in the top of the ninth. They score their only run. The Prime Minister has reason to smile, as do Stieb and the Blue Jays. Henke finishes it. They're up 1-0 in the best of 7, a 6-1 final, and we'll be right back.